Also going to talk about like the mindset behind closing a sale. And that's like the biggest thing I want to help you guys with is just shaping your mindset around it. Now, just so I'm clear, can everybody hear me nice and clear? Good. So yeah, I want to talk about the mindset behind closing a sale. So go ahead and just title this closing workshop. And the first thing I want you guys to write down. So I have 5 tips on like your mentality. And then I'm going to have 5 tips on like action, right? Like what you actually need to do. All right. So the first tip I want you guys to write down is your mentality or your mindset. All right. Your mentality or your mindset. So let's go back to day 1 of training, right? Basically in day 1 of training, when you guys first started, that's like the value day. Basically all we're doing is just teaching you guys how to build value in Cutco. All right, now let's just think of value, and I want you guys to kind of like just think like a customer. All right, I don't want you guys actually thinking like a representative right now. I want you guys to think like a customer, right? And imagine that you're shopping at your favorite store. It doesn't matter like what the store is. Just imagine shopping at your favorite store. So when you make a purchase, you buy based off of value, right? Like if something seems valuable to you, and it feels like it's a great deal, you're going to buy it, right? Or if you feel like you're going to gain a lot from this purchase, you decide to get it. All right. So right here, what you can write down in your notes is if the value is greater than the price, it's going to equal a sale. All right. I forgot what those symbols are called. I just call them the shark teeth. I remember that from like 2nd grade or whatever. Right. But if the value is greater than the price, that equals a sale. Now, many of you guys, right, depends on what stage of your career that you're at. Many of you guys get right here in this position where the value is equal to the price. All right, so if the value is equal to the price, it's like a maybe, right? So that equals, usually that's when you get that's when you get the customers saying, oh, I need to think about it, right? Has anybody ever gotten a customer say that? Oh, I need to think about it. Just give me a couple days, or I'll get it next week or something like that. And it's just because it wasn't clear that the value was way more than the price. So now when the customer is right there, it's up to the customer. Like now the customer has to kind of sell themselves on why they're buying Cutco, right? Or they got to like, they're trying to find the value, or they're trying to find where there's not enough value to make that decision today. And then the third thing is like the value is if the price is greater than the value, then that means it's going to be a no sell. Right? You guys never buy something if you know that you're getting ripped off, right? Or if it feels like it's not a good enough deal. So it's our job to build up the value. All right? That's literally your job is to build up the value. And Bailey, I saw your chat. You're supposed to be in here. This is your last day of your fast start. You're supposed to be in here. Okay, so it's our job to build up the value. I don't even want you guys thinking your job is to sell Cutco. All right, that is actually not your job. Cutco sells itself. Would you guys agree that most of your customers love Cutco? Right? Even the ones that don't buy, they're like, this product's amazing. Like, I love it. Right? So you don't even, that's not you guys, by the way. Right? Like that's not you guys getting that reaction, right? So now your job is to build up the value and show that customer how they can afford it, how they can get it today. That is what your job is to build the value. And here's the thing, guys, price is almost never the issue. All right, has anybody ever heard a customer say it's too expensive? When a customer says that, that's just because the price, in their opinion, is more than the value. All right, but price is never the case. How many of you guys are paying for college or going to college? Great. I'm going to use school as an example because that's what most of you guys are doing. Did anybody have $40,000 when you signed up to go to college? No, right? Any of you guys have 100K when you signed up to become a lawyer, right? Or a doctor? No. All right. So right there, I just proved it. Price doesn't matter. Even though you didn't have $40,000, you're like, well, I'm going to go to school anyways, right? So it's the decision that you got to make before you actually Do it, right? So the customers need to decide that they're going to buy, right? Customers will decide that they're going to buy something, and then they figure out how they're going to pay for it, right? That's almost always the case. So that's what we're, and the same thing with cars, right? Like some of you guys bought a brand new car. You're like, I don't have 30,000, but I know I can make a payment on it. I can afford that payment once a month, right? So price is almost never the issue. All right. So now the second thing I want you guys to write down underneath the mentality. All right. So this is my second main point is assume the sale. All right. You guys got to assume the sale. And this is where your confidence comes into play. So everybody on here said that they like Cutco, right? That their customers like Cutco. Almost everybody likes Cutco. So if you already know everybody's going to like your product, right there, that's like a confidence point right there. You should be confident when you're selling Cutco, right? And now I want you guys to put yourselves in the mindset of a customer, right? Imagine you're 30, 40, 60 years old and you cook every single day, you have a family. Are you going to buy Cutco? And if you can say that for a fact, yes, perfect, right? If you're still like, I don't know, right? Like if you think Cutco is too expensive, you will not sell that much Cutco, plain and simple, right? Like in my opinion, I think we should charge more for the homemaker. The homemaker should at least be $2,000 or $3,000, right? Like you guys saw Wusthof and Shun. Those are top selling brands in the stores. Like I don't get why we don't sell our homemaker for way more, right? Like we should sell the homemaker way more. Like when I was a brand new representative, the homemaker was under $1,000, right? And that was like way underpriced. What the price that it's at right now, we've sold more homemakers than ever before. So like when customers are buying homemakers this often, like technically most companies should raise the price, right? It's our most popular set for a reason. So I think the homemaker is definitely underpriced. All right. So you gotta now with when I say assume the sale, you guys got to understand weak language. All right. When you got to understand the weak language. All right. And like, for example, sometimes I work with representatives and they tell me like, oh, they didn't buy Cutco. They didn't buy, right? Right there. That's weak language. You're blaming the customer. You're like, oh, the customer didn't buy, right? So I want you guys to shift that mindset. All right. It's actually not the customer's fault that they didn't buy. Right. So when you're talking like that, when you're blaming the customer, you're waiting for the customer to buy. That means you're not even like doing any work, right? If you're just like, oh, like they didn't buy or they did buy this time, that means you didn't really do anything to get that sale, right? That just means you're just in front of the right person and you're just waiting for people to buy things, right? But our job as a representative, we got to influence that sale, all right? So you got to accept the responsibility that you're in control of the demo, right? You got to accept the responsibility. Right. And here's the other thing I want to remind you guys. It's not a battle. So many times I'm talking with a representative and they're like, how do I change the customer's mind? How do I get them to buy more? That is not like the goal of the demo. All right. So it's not a battle, right? You're actually working with the customer, right? You want to make sure you're on the customer's side. So write this down in bold, put a star next to this. Believe that they will buy something. Believe that they will buy something. Everybody's gone into a demo. Maybe you haven't yet, but most of you guys have probably gone into a demo before where the customer is like, oh yeah, I love Cutco, or I've heard of Cutco, or I want to buy a couple pieces. Has anybody been into a demo like that where you already know the customer wanted something? So how did your confidence feel going into that appointment? You were actually looking forward to that appointment. You were excited. You're like, oh, sweet, I'm going to sell something. I know it for sure. She already told me, right? So go into all your appointments like that, right? Think about like how you treat that customer when you already know that they want to buy, right? You're like, oh yeah, like she already knows that they want to buy. And I want to take you guys back into your first weekend on the job, right? Many of you guys made sales your first weekend on the job. And all we did in training was just teach you guys how to be confident and be enthusiastic, right? That's all we really taught you in training, right? So, and the reason why you're more confident in your first weekend on the job, or why you got more sales your first weekend on the job, is just because you were confident in those customers, just because you knew a little bit about them, right? You're like, oh, my grandma, she loves to cook. She buys everything. I know she's going to buy something, right? So you went into that appointment with more confidence, all right? But now when you're seeing recommendations and people that you don't know, you're unsure. Now you're in that position of hope. You're like, oh man, I hope they buy something. Right there, that's weak language, right? So you're not assuming the sale. So right there, just that little mindset change, right? What if every customer told you that they were going to buy something, right? What if I told you going into your appointment? My team has heard me say this a ton, right? What if I said this customer, they're loaded, they're like a millionaire, and they've been looking for Cutco their whole life. How are you going to treat that appointment? Right? You're going to treat it like your best. So why not just do all your appointments like that? Right? Do not change how you do appointment just because of what a customer tells you over the phone. Some of you guys probably made a call this morning where a customer said, oh yeah, I'll help you out, but I'm not buying anything. Right? Don't change how you do your appointment. Like, okay, great, no worries. It helps me get practice. And then go and deliver your best appointment ever. Right? Like, I can't even tell you how many times I sold $1,000+ to a customer that said that they weren't going to buy, or that they don't need knives, or that it's way too expensive, and then they spend $1,000. All right. So like, we do this all the time when we're shopping, right? You guys go into a store, you're like, I just need to go pick up one thing. Then you walk out with a basket full, right? You see your parents do it all the time when they go to Costco, right? The reason why, like, have you guys ever noticed, like, some of your parents, when they go into Costco, if it's at Costco, they trust it, right? Because Costco has built up that value for their brand, right? Where it's like you get a lot of value, you get a lot of bang for your buck. It's better when you buy it from Costco. You know it's trusted when it comes from Costco. Doesn't matter what it is. You'll see your family spend dollars, hundreds of dollars on just random stuff. They're like, oh, but I got it from Costco. Like, I love, like, that's people's justification. Oh, it's from Costco, so it's fine. It's from Costco, so it's good, right? But that's what Costco has done, right? So mindset, all right? Mindset right there, all right? And then the third thing I want you guys to write down is expectations and framing. So expectations and framing. So framing, the reason why we don't teach you guys framing and training is just because it's a little advanced. You haven't done enough appointments to understand what this really means. So framing equals setting the stage for your customers. So what I mean by setting the stage, right? We want to, like, kind of tell the customers what we want them to get, right? So you'll notice in the manual, there's certain sections where it says the word sets a ton, right? You just want to start using that language more. Right? So, like, let's just say you're building a rapport with your customer. Here it comes back to assuming the sale. Like, hey, Mrs. Jones, later on today, I'm going to help you pick out your first set, right? Or when I show you your favorite set of Cutco, right? You notice how I'm saying I'm giving them ownership, and I'm do that from the start, right? Like, oh, you're going to love your set of Cutco today. And I haven't even shown them the sets yet. How many times can you say sets, or your set, or your purchase, your next decision? Right? How many times can you say that in your demo? Start framing it in the rapport. Start framing that. You can even start framing that on the phone call, right? Like, oh yeah, you're going to love it. We're going to have so much fun, and I'll help you pick out your stuff at the end, right? Like, how many times can you just throw that in there, right? Or another framing word, when you get this, right? So like, I'm saying this all the time, like, Miss Jones, when you get your homemaker set, you're going to love this, this, and this. When you buy your ultimate set today, like, it's so sick, you're going to get the cleaver, right? And you're going to love your cleaver, right? When you get your ultimate set, you're going to want our cookware next, right? And I'm just dropping all these little hints throughout the presentation. So then now when I show them that option, they already feel like it's theirs, right? Like, it kind of already feels like the decisions have been made. And then also when you're, like, framing, right? Like, saying, like, phrases like what everyone gets, Mrs. Jones, versus what people don't get. Right? So I'm like, yeah, most customers, they start off with something in the middle, like our basic set, the homemaker, right? The homemaker is called the basic set. So yeah, what everyone usually starts off with is our basic set. A lot of people don't like to just get pieces, just because they found that it doesn't help them out throughout the whole course of the year. They get more value when they get their set, right? And then you're also helping your customers frame, like, what's a lot and what's a little bit. That's why the Wusthof and Shun price comparison is so important, right? So you're like, yeah, Mr. Jones, this is a lot to spend on knives, right? But this is, like, how much the best cost, right? Now, a little bit is when they're buying their cheapy, like, oh yeah, Mrs. Jones, if you only spent like $200, $300 on your set of knives, that's only a little bit, and you're gonna get what you're gonna pay for what you get. All right. So here, write this down. Put a star next to this. How many times can you say 30, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I want my customers thinking long term about this decision because Cutco's not just a purchase, it's an investment. Cutco's not just a purchase, it's an investment. So when a customer is thinking about like a big set of Cutco, I'm like, well, Mrs. Jones, if you're having trouble thinking, what are you going to get the most value of in the next 20, 30, 40 years? Right? Yes, you could get the studio set today, but 20 years from now, do you think that's still going to be the right set for you? Right? 20, 30, 40 years from now, like, is this still going to be the perfect option? All right, cool, Ms. Jones. I want you to think forward, right? Like, what's going to be the perfect option 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? All right, so getting them in that mindset of thinking long term. All right, the fourth thing I want you guys to write down is your language, tone, pacing, and enthusiasm. So language, tone, pacing, and enthusiasm. All right, and underneath that, I'm gonna have you guys write down some words. All right, please write these down. Maybe, sort of. So maybe, sort of. Could you? Anyway, possibly, hopefully, and I guess. So maybe, sort of, could you, anyway, possibly, hopefully, and I guess. All right. If you wrote those words down, now I want you guys to cross those words out. Cross out all those words. Draw a big line across all those words. I don't want you guys using those words ever again in your demo. All right. Your language is so important. All right. All those words I just gave you guys, they provide negative value. All right. You want to avoid these words at all costs. All right. They provide negative value. So, like we're building up value during the whole presentation. Let's just imagine building value is like a point system. Every time you use one of these words, it devalues what you just said. Right. So we don't want to say like, oh, maybe Mrs. Jones, if you got this, right there, it just takes away all the value, right? Because you sound like you're unsure. Those words make you sound less confident. They make the customers like less sure about what their decision. All right. So they don't provide confidence, clarity, or certainty. So we want to get rid of those words. Now, I want you guys to write this down as well. Power pausing. Power pausing. You notice I just paused right there, right? So when you're talking with a customer, you want to use these power pauses, especially when you want a customer to really understand something. You want to slow down and pause, right? So slow your words down. Here's a big mistake that new representatives make is they're just reading, right? So they're just reading like if they're reading a book and it comes across fast, right? So if you're reading too fast, your customer's not getting the full value. They're not quite understanding everything that you're saying. So that's why you want to use these power pauses. So this way it brings the customer's attention, right? They're going to gain a lot of attention and it's going to create engagement and you're emphasizing something. All right. And usually the bold in your manual, anything that's written in bold, that's a good place to do a power pause. So that way your customers are fully with you. They fully understand. Slow down. That's like the biggest tip right here underneath this section. Just slow down. I promise you reading fast is going to lead to more questions, which actually makes your demo longer. Does that make sense? So slow down so this way your customers understand it the first time versus you having to try to read through it as fast as you can and then getting a bunch of questions and feeling like you have to repeat yourself a million times. Now, also, this controls the energy of the presentation as well, right? When customers feel like they understand something and they get it, now they feel more confident in their decision. So if you guys ever get a chance to go field training with somebody that's like a top selling representative, like one of our CSPs, or if you get a chance to see them sell behind a booth, they talk very slowly, they pause, and then they sell a ton. It's just because the customer's with them throughout the whole process. So they're like, I get it, I understand, I want, right? So that's the power of talking slower and then pausing. But then now sometimes there's great situations where you can speed up how you talk, right? So you can speed up like this, like, Miss Jones, check out this butcher knife. This butcher knife is insane. Did you guys just feel that energy? Right? So when you speed up, it creates some energy, it creates excitement. All right. So that's great right there. All right. The fifth thing underneath like the mentality is verbal fencing. So verbal fencing. Has anybody ever watched fencing before? Like in the Olympics? Or does everybody know what fencing is? Like the swords? Right? All right, perfect. So customers, what I mean by verbal fencing, this is like the customer when they're saying every reason why they shouldn't buy. And then so like your customers are just like poking around, right? They're like knocking away all your words. They're like, this is why I can't buy, this is why I can't buy, this is why I can't buy. And then you're on the other end saying, this is why you can buy, this is why you can buy, this is why you can buy. Right? Now it kind of turns into like this fencing match. All right. So write this down. Be a lawyer. Be a lawyer. So listen to all the words that your customers are saying. Most of the time, we're too fast to respond. So when a customer is giving you objections, when your customer is giving you objections, listen, soak it all in. All right, listen to the words that they're saying, right? And then now you want to respond with some yes questions. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some yes questions, right? Do you like Cutco, Mrs. Jones? Do you like Cutco? Do you want Cutco one day? Do you want Cutco one day? If you had it, would you use it? And if you could afford it, would you get it? So you notice, yes, 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 yes. So sometimes as we're like working on our sale, you get all these no's, right? And the customers kind of get in a rhythm of just saying no over and over and over again. And now it looks like they're just like not even trying. They're just like, no, no, no. What'd you say? No, right? We want to be able to break that up, right? So if you notice that you keep getting like no's and you're feeling like the customers are just kind of just saying no's, you just want to repeat those questions, right? And yes, Grant, I'm going to repeat those questions for you, right? So you just want to ask them like, okay, Miss Jones, hold on, let me pause for a second. All right, do you like Cutco? And she's going to be like, yeah, Cutco's the best. I love it. Okay, cool. If you had it, would you use it? They're going to say, yeah, of course. If you could afford it, would you get Cutco today? And if they say yes, right? Like those three questions right there, that's awesome, right? You just got 3 yeses in a row, right? So now that just shifts your customer's mentality, right? Mentality is so important with everything, right? So then now when they said, oh, if you could afford it, would you get it today? Now they're just like, they just basically told you like, yes, it's just the price that's holding me back. Right. And those of you guys that were on my Champs Clubs a few weeks ago, right, you already know the phrase I'm probably going to use. Write down this phrase. If I was to give you a super turbocharged deal, if I was to give you a super turbocharged deal, would you consider getting it today? Right after those 3 yes questions. Right? So now you're like, all right, if I was to give you a super turbocharged deal, would you consider getting it today? And then now that piques some interest, right? So now they're like, maybe. Actually, what you got? What you got? Right? And then that's when they're gonna ask you. They're gonna be like, all right, Alyssa, all right, David, what you got for me? What do you got in store? And then that's when you pull out whatever kind of crazy deal. All right. But that right there, that was like the first part I wanted to talk about, was just like the mentality. All right. The next 5 things I'm going to go through them really quick. I might run a little over. Hopefully you guys don't mind. Is this good stuff right here? Okay, cool. So this is the techniques. All right. So these are the techniques to closing. The first one, you got to handle the knee-jerk reactions. Handle the knee-jerk reactions. That's page 9. Page 9 in your manual. Learn as many of those as possible, right? How many of those can you just spit off the top of your head, right? Where you're just like, all right, Mrs. Jones, like they say it's too much money or I can't afford it. Hey, I completely understand. 1326 is a lot all at once. That's why most customers split it up over 5 months interest free. It would only be $289 per month. How does that sound? Right? Like how many of those do you have memorized? Right? Because if you have that memorized, it just flows off the top of your head super easy. Right? So you wanna catch. And then have you guys ever like caught somebody in a lie before? And like you 100% knew that they were lying and you just kept digging in, asking more questions until they were finally like, yes, okay, I did it. Right? That's kind of like learning how to handle your objections. All right. The second technique that you need to work on is visuals. Sorry, visuals. And next to that, you can just write down writing the prices down. I know we teach this in basic training, but there's still a lot of people that don't have their customers write it down. And on Zoom, there is like a whiteboard function. Like you could write it down for your customers if they didn't like want to write down the prices themselves. But this is so powerful because customers need to see the exact numbers, right? Like, has anybody ever been into like a Chipotle or something like that? And you're looking at the menu. What are you doing at the menu? You're like, should I get this or should I get this? And then you look at the price. You're comparing the prices, right? You're like, if I got steak, it's going to be 75 cents more than chicken, right? Or whatever you're comparing, right? We do this on the day to day. That's why I want you guys to think like a customer. Don't think like a sales rep. Think like a customer. Don't think like a sales rep. All right. And make sure your customers write down the prices because most people are visual people. They like to compare and contrast. The third thing is put a star next to this one. Leverage your manager. Leverage your manager. So what I mean by leveraging your manager is call us during the drop down process. And this is a big thing that a lot of reps, for some reason, after they hit a couple of promotions, they think that they just got it, right? And then they stop calling in. And then they notice their sales start to go down, right? They stop selling as often, right? And they think it's just like, they're like, oh, am I not good at selling Cutco anymore? Am I just seeing the wrong people? Most of the time, it's because they stopped leveraging their manager. All right. And basically what leveraging is using the influence of a higher entity to your advantage. Right. And like even my best representatives, like guys that are already at $1 million in sales, right? AJ Pacheco just did this with me yesterday and sold an ultimate set. He stopped for a little bit and he's like, John, I've had a no sale streak. I don't know what's going on. And then he figured it out. He's like, oh, I stopped calling you. Let me start calling you again. Let me see how that works. Ultimate set, first order he calls it. All right. And AJ, he's at $300,000 in Cutco sales. He knows all the deals. He knows all the specials. He knows how to sell Cutco. Right. And when he calls in, he's like, hey, John, I'm here with these awesome customers. I just wanted to see, like, do we have any specials? And like, I'm not even talking on the phone. He's just like, what? Really? Oh, hey, Mrs. Jones, my manager's feeling really good. I got something special for you. Right. And what this does by leveraging your manager, it puts you on the same team as your customers. Right. You want to be on team customer where it's like you and the customer are versus the manager. Right. So now when the customer feels like you're on their side, you're trying to fight and get them the best deal possible. Now the customers are going to want to buy. Does that make sense to everybody? So now it goes from you versus the customer to you and the customer versus the system, whatever you want to call it, right? Because people want somebody on their side, right? And if they know like, oh man, this guy's asking his manager for giving me a better deal, right? Customers really love that. All right. So you're never too good to utilize your manager. All right. The best reps do it. That's why we tell you guys, call in, call after you show the homemaker, call as many times as you need during the drop down process. All right. The fourth technique is handle the objections before they come up. Handle the objections before they come up. So whatever it is, you guys can start to get a sense, right? You notice like you ask your customers on the phone, like, oh, is your husband going to be there? And then you show up for the Zoom and it's just the wife or it's just the husband, right? So you already know you need to handle some objections, right? You're like, oh, hey, Mr. Jones, will Mrs. Jones be joining us today? Right? And then he's like, oh no, she's busy or something like that. Like, okay, cool. Right? Like, hey, just so I have an idea, like who does most of the cooking? Is it you or is it your wife? Okay, sweet, right? And you want to start handling those objections, right? Who makes most of the decisions for the kitchen? Okay, awesome, right? So that way you can figure out if you're in front of the right person or try to figure out a way to get the wife over there. Like, hey, do you think we could steal your wife just for 1 second? I just want to show her some really cool stuff, right? And then play the video for the wife. And then now she's hooked. Now she's engaged. All right, so handle the objections before they come up. The fifth thing is you got to rebuild value. So you got to rebuild the value. And here's probably the thing that you guys will probably take the most value out of this talk, right? You handle the objections. I know some of you guys are doing a great job learning the objections, handling them, and you're like, I'm still not getting the result, John. I did most of this. What a lot of people forget is when you handle an objection, right? Remember that point system I talked about? Let's say like the value points, every time you handle objection, it kind of brings down the value a little bit more. So you got to make sure you rebuild that value and bring it back up. So that's why we want you guys to stick to the manual, because those objections in the manual naturally redo that, right? So you remember what I said, like it was too much money. Hey, I completely understand. I listened to them. 1326 is a lot all at once, right? I'm on the same side as them. Here's what most customers do, right? Even if some of you guys haven't had most customers yet because you're brand new, you can still say it, all right? 92% of customers last year bought the Homemaker Plus 8 on a 5-pay. So what most customers do is take advantage, right? You see the wording, take advantage of our easy pay option. So it's only going to be, for 5 months, it's only going to be $289. Would you like to try that out today? Right? So right there, we rebuilt the value into the payment options, and then we asked for the order again. All right. So those were some of my mentalities, my mindset about closing. All right, closing the sale. And then here's all I'm going to say about how to close the big sets. Are you guys ready? This is going to blow your mind. Just show them. Just show them and try to sell them. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. All right. You just got to show them. Show all your customers the ultimate set. What's the worst that can happen? They just say no. Right? But here's what like the great thing that happens by showing the ultimate set, it actually makes everything else look super tiny. So just by showing the ultimate set more often, you're probably going to sell more homemakers. But you're also going to give yourself more chances at selling the ultimate set. That's all. Just show it. Show it and try to sell it. All right? So I'll stick on for any questions. If you guys have any questions, I'll stick on for that.